Hi, Cheryl from Garden in the Burrow. So I'm sitting out on my porch. We are getting some much needed rain over the next few days. So I'm getting to take a little break from all the work I've been doing out in the garden. So I've been doing a lot of sort of basic transplanting and dividing and a lot of soil building, a lot of adding in of compost and organic matter, and a lot of beds that really needed that this some fresh soil. And you'll see some in some of the other videos that I did, and I'm going to continue that. Like, I still have a lot more to do. And but while I was out in the garden, I noticed that this time of year, the garden, I mean, there's a lot of fall blooming plants here, but what really brings so much color to the garden right now and interest are all of our ornamentals that are making seeds. And so many of our trees and shrubs and vines and all sorts of plants that flowered earlier in the season, now they're into seed production. And so many of them have interesting ways to make their seeds attractive to whatever needs to disperse them wildlife wise, or if it's wind, they have mechanisms for that. And all of that makes the garden feel different and look different than any other time of year. So as I was out, like I said, I was noticing all the different fruit drupes, seed pods, seed heads. And so I thought I might just walk around and take a video of some of the ones that were really visible, really maybe interesting. And I hope that interests you too. And I hope that if you like any of my videos, that you hit like and subscribe so you can see any more that I upload. But for now, let's go take a walk around the garden and see if we can find any sort of cool seed. So I did want to start here with this plant right here, which is five-leaved Akebia, and I'll put its name. It has a bunch of common names: chocolate vine, five-leaved Akebia, but this is an aggressive vine. I don't really recommend almost anybody growing this vine. It needs a firm hand. And so we have to control this. And in some years, we've had it growing all the way up and across and down, and it's covered this whole space. And some years we cut it way back. And this year it's kind of in the middle. So it's actually planted in the ground. I'm standing up on my porch. So we're probably, it's probably maybe 3 or 4 feet from the ground before we hit the base of the porch. And then from here, and you can see how big it is just here, but it's also over to the side of me. And there's actually 2 growing here. And why are there 2? Well, this one is the straight species, which is Akebia equinata. And the other one that will, I'll sort of pan out to it after I'm done up here, is a yellow variety called Alba. Well, it's called Alba because it's white, but it looks yellow to me. But when you have 2, you can actually get fruit. Now, Akebia flowers early in the spring. It's one of the first things to bloom. And it has these little pendulous flowers that are dark purple. They're really, you have to be up close to see them. And they do have a fragrance that smells like chocolate. That's why it's called chocolate vine. And they're tiny. They're smaller than a dime. And if you have 2 and they can pollinate, meaning 2 different varieties, and they can pollinate with each other, you'll get fruit. So I'm going to now, like, I was going to pick it, but I'm actually going to walk into it because I think it's cooler to see it on the vine. So I'll get behind the camera and I'll bring you in to see it. Oops, somebody's Amazon truck is coming on through. Take a pause. All right, so here we are looking at the fruit of the Akebia vine. So this fruit is like this long oblong shape, and the outside of it feels like suede, like it has a very distinct texture. And the fruit itself is this closed, like sausage looking thing until it's ripe, and then it bursts open. And you can see that these 2 fruits, and there's some in the, there's more, there's actually some bigger ones down in the front. I don't know if you can see it from here. Let me move this vine. There's another one down there that's probably twice the size of this one. This one's probably about maybe 3 inches or so, and the one underneath me is more than that. But you can see when they burst open, you see this sort of gelatinous pulp with black seeds on the inside. And if you wanted to eat it, you would eat all of that. So you'd have the texture, which I've heard described as coconutty, and it's sort of, again, gelatinous. I'm going to say slimy. It looks slimy, but you eat it along with the seeds, so you get the crunch of the seeds and the pulp at the same time. And so that fruit came from flowers that were smaller than a dime. Akebia doesn't always fruit every year. These vines probably every other year fruit, and I've never eaten them. I don't want to eat them, but they are edible. People grow them as part of their edible garden or foraging garden, um, and they're just so cool. I'm gonna um, break the one off that's down in front, and then I'll put it up here so you can see the difference in the two. All right, I got one of the two off, and you can see that sort of pulp and seed. This one just recently, I kind of broke the outside. That this one more recently opened, so nothing started eating it, but you would scoop out that bit on the inside that's already sort of someone started eating over here, and you would eat that with the seeds and the pulp all together. And that's what the outside looks like. Sort of, I guess, potato is what it feels like. And you can see how much bigger this one is than the other two. So that's one really cool fruit that's happening here. So let's go walk around and see what else we can see. I know we're kind of losing sunlight here, but we were standing right next to a new dawn rose, which I've stopped deadheading so we can have rose hips over here. And these are a pretty good size rose hip. You can see they're pretty big. And we'll look at some other rose hips when we walk by. But once I stop deadheading my roses late in the season, then we'll start to get rose hips. The other berries that are usually in here, wow, look at that beautiful sky, are on this viburnum. So this is Viburnum burkwoodii, and it does get berries, but I think that the minute they get on the shrub, the birds eat them. Like, I don't think they persist all that long. The minute you see berries appear, they pretty much disappear. This viburnum, though, has not turned yet, but it turns the most amazing color in fall. So after a leaf turn, we'll come back and look at this viburnum, but it does have berries. They're just not all that prominent. And then right across the way from it, we have one of my many crabapple trees. This does not seem to be a banner year. Last year, there were so many crab apples on these trees. I was worried for them over the winter time because of the weight. This year just seems average, but still, the birds go crazy for these. This is Mrs. Robinson, this crabapple. I think I have 5 crabapple trees. And this one is the one that usually ends up the most laden with fruit. So that's going on. There is another viburnum here that's, again, I think the berries got eaten, which it's a cranberry bush viburnum, so we don't really have that to look at, but we're going to go look for some other fruits and berries out in the garden. I grow a number of deciduous hollies, and this one is, I, I remember this being berry heavy. That's the name of it, even though it doesn't appear to be berry heavy. But this is red ilex. We'll look at the winter gold out back, but this one has a pretty decent crop, I guess, of berries. And they'll persist after the leaves drop, so we'll get to see some of them through the later parts of fall. As we came up the pathway, I had to stop at this purple hyacinth bean vine. And again, I'll put its name. This is just finishing flowering, and you can see right after the flowers form and start to drop off, these pods start forming. Now these pods, and you can't, they're very dull right now, but in a couple of weeks as they get bigger, they're going to turn more bright purple than this. So they're going to get larger, and they're going to get more like that color than this color. And then they'll darken up again when to like a brown, and they have this, look how shiny they are. They're just so cool. And the seeds, and I'll put a picture in here, the seeds that are inside these pods look like little Oreo cookies. And they're some of the easiest seeds to harvest because you just, when the pods get dry and brown, you just take them off, and there's usually like 2 or 3 seeds in each one. You can hear my Quaker parrot. She's right inside the window next to us. She's talking. But these seed pods are really, really cool. And that's the purple hyacinth bean. This is an annual vine that you start from seed. About the same time you start green beans, like the first week of June in the garden. Another cool shrub for berries is Calicarpa or beautyberry. And this is not our native. This is a Korean variety called Calicarpa I'll put its name in here. I can't remember the species name. It begins with a D. Anyway, it's early amethyst is the variety, and it starts its berry production about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks before the other varieties. So we do have a native Calicarpa, but it tends to be much bigger and kind of rangier. I mean, this is not a shrub that you plant for its shape. It's very forsythia-like in that it just goes wherever it wants to, and it's a dieback shrub. So you'll see down at the base, all that wood, that's where I cut it back to, and it's almost coppiced. So all of this new wood, pencil thin stems on this that flower all along the stem, and then you get these clusters of berries. Those haven't turned purple yet, but you can see there's more in there that have. So again, really, really fun when this, and these berries will persist after the leaves drop, and sometimes all the way until we have snow. And these purple berries in the snow is, I can't even, it's such a garden surprise. It's so amazing. So that's Calicarpa or beautyberry. We're going to stop right next to where the beautyberry was to look at one of my favorite clematis. This is Viorna, and you can see it is still blooming. This has been blooming since June, and you can see all the flowers that have gone by looking at all the seed heads, which are really fascinating. And as they age, and you can see these have some age on them, they start to get really, really furry. So you can see all the little wispy hairs on there. So like milkweed, it becomes like a puff, and you can see that the seeds are attached right to the little puff, and that's going to help the wind disperse that seed. So it's like a little feather, and the wind will take it off and blow it away, and then hopefully it will germinate somewhere, and you'll get a new Clematis Viorna. Oops. Right, now we're looking at the seed head of a sweet bay magnolia. This is Magnolia virginiana moonglow. And this thing had a very good flowering year. And their magnolia seed heads are all these little follicles, and you can see they're all wrapped in tight around the seeds, around the little seed capsules. And as time goes by, they'll burst open. And when they burst open, then you'll see the bright red seeds. So those are the actual seeds to this magnolia, Sweet Bay magnolia. And we have a number of seed pods on here that are just coloring up. A few that have burst open, but most of them are still forming. There's one that's another few that have burst already. You can see those seeds. And then they'll be taken away by the birds for seed dispersal via bird poop. In my last series of videos of redoing this back garden, I talked about this winter gold holly quite a bit, and you can see how bright these berries are. They have such a great color, and they're going to persist on here until the leaves are going to fall and it's going to be snowing and it's going to be February, and then one day in either late January or early February, we're going to have a flock of robins that comes in. These berries are very bitter until they've gone through some freeze-thaw cycles. And as soon as they have, the birds can't get enough of them. And they'll come and they'll just gorge themselves on these holly berries and on the berries. We have some evergreen holly out front. And so we'll just see them in the yard until all the shrubs have been stripped of all the bird food. These fruits that are growing here are from a kuzu dogwood, and they are pretty much just ornamental. So a friend of mine had a kuzu dogwood that had a bunch of little baby kuzu dogwoods underneath it from these seeds, the seeds falling and germinating. And so I got 2 of them, and they're both just finally getting to be pretty sizable because they were seed grown. And these fruits are, again, highly ornamental. You could eat them. I tried them once when I was working with the master gardeners, and there was a tree in one of the gardens, and a friend of mine and I took them off, and you basically have to put the whole berry in your mouth, and you basically suck all the pulp off and then spit out the seeds. It doesn't taste good at all. I found it to be very bitter. But I guess where this dogwood grows endemically, or where it's native to, monkeys and other small mammals there will eat these fruits. They're probably highly nutritious, I would imagine. They're just not very appealing to eat, but they are beautiful to look at. So just ornamental value for us here in the Northeast, but all the same, very, very pretty. I have another dogwood very nearby that I always thought was a red osier dogwood, but I'm pretty sure that it is a swamp dogwood. So this is a native species. It is growing not in a swamp, but in dry sand. And it gets these very shimmery blue berries. They're almost metallic. They're so shiny. And the birds love these. So they'll eat these. And you can see they're all over the plant. And this does have colored stems. They're not very bright, but they are red tinged. And this thing gets foliar diseases like nobody's business, but it's just growing up through other shrubs. If I can back out far enough that you can see. But this isn't growing like as a specimen plant. It's growing up, let me see, through junipers. It just comes up here and there. And so you'll see the flowers when it's flowering. You'll see the stems in the wintertime, which is why I'm growing it here, because you can see where the leaves are already off. You'll see red stems, and it looks really good in the snow to see the dark colored stems coming up through the juniper. when there's snow load over here. And of course, the berries again are pretty ornamental. I'll put what I think is its species name again up on the screen. These rose hips belong to Rosa glauca, and I think this shrub lost most of its leaves because of how dry it's been this part of the late summer. It always gets a little bit of black spot, but this year it was terrible for it because I think of how we've had no rain really. It's been super dry. But these are the rose hips, and I'm going to insert a picture here so you can see what they look like when they're first forming. When this shrub first makes the rose hips after it flowers, they're like this cool, almost coral color. And then they turn really, really bright red. And then as they age, they'll get even darker. You can see one there. That's the rose hips of Rosa glauca. More funky seed heads, and this is Clematis hexapetala, and you can see these are really tiny, and they're just starting to fuzz up. They're so cool. Growing in this garden underneath this birch and up into this lilac is a hops, Humulus lupulus aurea. And I grow this in a couple of different places, and I had to get this down from high in the tree, but this is its seed head or the actual hops. It's really cool with all the little scales, and these dangle down from high up in the tree. Trying to get it to stop wiggling so much so you can see it. I'll put it in my hand, I guess. And there's our hops. This is a seed head that's recognizable to many people. It's an allium. I think this one is serendipity. And this is a little bit later flowering. And so when it finished, these are its seed heads, which will persist for quite some time. And just for reference, well, my hand still has hops in it, but you can see they're not that big. These are not huge alliums like Globemaster, or Everest, but cool all the same. Another really cool clematis, and this one has really, really big seed heads. And now this bloomed in June, and it's now the end of September. And you can see these seed heads, and they're really ready to go. But look at it's so cool that it looks like teddy bear fur or I don't know. It's just how dark it gets and how wispy and feathery it is. This one's really cool. Like someone's toupee hanging out on top of the plant. So instead of looking like sometimes clematis, the Virginiana and some of the other ones are called old man's beard because they look like a beard, but this one is like old man's toupee. And this is from Clematis Dr. Ruppel. There is Clematis Virginiana right next to me. It's everywhere. It's all along this fence, but I don't see any big seed heads yet. The flowers are just basically falling off. So it might be a little bit before we get seed heads maybe. Oh, that's red bud. That's the seed pod of Cercis canadensis right there. Looking very pea-like, reminding you what family it belongs to. I do grow about a half dozen evergreen hollies, blue princess. I'm not sure which one this is, but they're mostly out in the front of my house as just as evergreen foundation plants, but they are all covered in their berries now until the birds take them. What I love about this one is I'll back out a little bit and you can see that this one sits right in front of our living room window. Mr. Begonia in there. He went back in for the cold months. So it's right out the front of these two windows in our living room. So when the robins come in the winter to eat the berries off this, you can just, it's like your own little private show sitting in the living room, watching them just devour all the berries off this holly. I guess while we're out talking about fruit and berries, we'll talk about, this is a pear. I don't know the variety. It was planted, whoops. These were planted a long time ago, and I don't think I ever paid attention to what they were when I put them in. We do harvest them in years that we have a bumper crop, but this year it's a biennial bearer, so there's not many on here. This was a heck of a year. In case any of you are wondering what happened to your lilacs, this was a bad year for foliar diseases on lilacs. I was talking with my arborist about it today. So many of them have already dropped their leaves. There's my car. But here's our pears. So it's funny that these pears, like I said, we don't always harvest them. And so in years, we've been wondering what happens in a bumper crop year when there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, what happened to them all, because we never have to clean them up off the ground. And so we put a trail cam out here, and every one of them was eaten by coyotes who are scavengers, but I didn't realize that they would eat pears. The other fruit we grow out here is another apple. It's a green apple that we got in an orchard a long time ago. Again, I can't remember the name of it, and we don't spray any of our apples. In a bumper crop year, this thing would be loaded. This year, you know, we have some, not as many as we usually do, but we'll take them in. They're great for baking. I actually eat them. My daughters love them, and so I'll come out and pick those. But usually we have to worry about coming out here daily to clean underneath the tree because of wasps. But this year we haven't really had to because this is its off year. So this year we'll just get, you know, fruit, but not a ton of fruit. And again, we don't spray it. So, you know, none of it looks perfect and it gets lots of problems, but still the fruit that is edible is pretty good. We'll finish with one everybody recognizes from childhood, and that's milkweed. So this is Asclepias tuberosa, and that's a pod right before it splits open. And those are the seeds that are ready to be carried away by the wind. And this, I'm actually going to harvest seeds from this. This is an extremely tap-rooted plant. It dislikes transplanting more than anything else I've ever tried to transplant. It does not want to be moved. And I'm going to grow some more from seed. This is really, really tolerant of the soil and sand and dryness here. And it's a beautiful, beautiful plant. And it has seeded itself. Well, there's a plant right in front. And then just a few feet away, you see a couple that are seedlings off that plant. But that's the furthest I've ever had it go. And we're about maybe, I would say about 6, 7 feet away from the plant. And that's as far as I've ever had it travel in the garden. So I'm going to take some of those seeds and bring them over to the other side of the garden where we have rabbit issues, because rabbits also do not eat this. And beautiful orange flowers. I'll put a picture in of what this looks like when it's blooming. But the seed heads are what we're looking at now, and the seed pods. So cool.